Hi everyone, thanks for tuning in. Today I'm going to show you how to install a standard gear cable in a regular mountain or hybrid bike. If you want to ignore all the talking and fast forward straight to the work, then you can skip to this time signature here. Otherwise, stay tuned and I will explain the science behind the gear cable installation as well. So pretty much every bike that exists in commonplace today uses a gear cable like the one we're going to use today. Of course, you've got your variances, Sturmey Archer for one, among many others, but billions of bikes use this system. And if you have a mountain bike at home or a hybrid bike, chances are it is going to use this cable. And I'm guessing that's why you've tuned in anyway, because you're going to want to change it. So there are two types of cables you can have. You can have a galvanized cable, which is a coated steel, or you can have a stainless steel cable. The two are slightly different, particularly with the price. The galvanized are cheaper, but that's because they are prone to rusting or oxidizing far quicker than the stainless steels. If you look after the stainless steels, they will far outlast the galvanized cables in terms of cost. There's only a couple of quid in it, so for me, it's not even worth arguing about. The problem with the galvanized cables is they don't just turn an unsightly orange rusty color eventually, but before that happens, when the oxidation process begins, they have a kind of a powdery white coating to them. That causes havoc inside the system because that gets pulled inside the black outer cable, and as a result, it clogs up the system. Guys, stick to stainless steel. For the sake of a couple of quid, it removes a lot of headache and it will last an awful lot longer. They do say, buy cheap, buy twice, and they're not wrong. Now, when it comes to changing the cable today, we are looking at the Shimano M310 series, but actually this principle applies to pretty much every gear lever out there. If you want me to show you particularly how to change the cable on your gear lever, which is different to this one, please put in the comments below and I will make sure to upload a video as soon as I can, as soon as one comes in, to show you how it's done. But the beautiful thing about this system is that while the gears are so crucial to working effectively on a bike, you actually only need a couple of basic tools. For this particular system, you need a medium-sized Phillips screwdriver, you need some wire cutters, you need something to crimp the end cap on the cable, you need a 5mm Allen or hex key, and also I like to use a bit of oil as well, and you'll see why a bit later. So the science behind it, if you didn't know, was when you have tension on the cable, it helps the derailleur to pull the chain over a larger cog, a larger sprocket. So if you have a number of gears on the back of the bike, pulling that cable enables it to go into the larger or easier gears. Think of going up a hill, you're going to want to go into gear 1. That's what's called the granny gear. It's the one I use all the time. And for that, you're going to need to add that tension to the cable. As the cable gets older, the tension's not going to be there, and it's just going to prove to be more of a headache than it's worth, and that's why we replaced the cable. Similarly, on the front derailleur, it's the opposite way around. To go to harder gears, you're going to pull the chain over a larger sprocket. So working from front to back, small to big is easy gears, big to small is harder gears. Okay, that's the science behind it. Let's get fixing. Now, we're assuming two things today before we start the work. The first is that your gear hanger, if you have one, is perfectly in line with the sprockets. The gear hanger is a softer piece of metal that attaches the derailleur to the frame of the bike. It might be, particularly if you have a lower budget bike or an older bike, you don't have a gear hanger and that this attaches directly to the frame. Either way, if this isn't perfectly parallel with the sprockets and the frame of the bike, you're going to have trouble. So it's assuming that that is straight. The other thing we're assuming is that you haven't had any problems up until now with the derailleur, that it's all dialed in correctly, that the limit screws are set properly. So you're only looking at this video because the gear cable has got old and maybe stretched, and that's the only reason. Otherwise, have a look at either video and I will show you how to install and correctly set up a derailleur, and similarly I will show you how to realign a bent gear hanger. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do is, using our screwdriver, remove the Phillips head screw, which is protecting the opening that the gear cable goes inside. It doesn't do anything more than protect it from dust and debris and water. So it's not essential, but it is if you want your cables to last longer. So it's important you don't lose it, put it safely to one side, and that's the first bit done. You then want to shift the gears to the smallest sprocket, which reduces and removes all of the tension that the cable has got, and then the head itself will be visible in the opening. And next you're going to want to loosen the Allen key bolt just here. It's not particularly tight, but it takes a bit of work, and don't remove it all the way, but just enough so the cable has worked itself loose. Now, using the wire cutters, if you cut the cable as near to the end of the final entry point as possible, we are going to pull the cable through. Now, by cutting off as much as possible, this reduces the amount of dirt that's going to get pulled through when we pull the cable. Now, we have the same issue at the front as we did at the back. We don't want all of this muck to be carried through the cable and getting stuck inside here, because it means it may affect the changing of gears even with a new cable. So what we're going to do is we're going to push this slightly to expose the gear cable head at the lever, and then we're going to snip it here. And then get rid of all of this excess, can go in the bin. While we're still at this end of the bike, you're going to turn this barrel screw clockwise, that's righty-tighty, and you're going to turn it all the way so it can't go any further. If you see this metal part here inside, that's coming out when you go lefty-loosey, and it's going in when you go right. Now, this is removing all the tension that the cable would have if it was still attached. And once you've tightened it up, you're going to then go back about a full turn, maybe about 3 twists like that. By removing this tension a little bit, it means there's a little bit of leeway in both directions to enable correct indexing of the gear cable. Now, this particular system actually has a barrel adjuster at the front of the gear lever as well. So we're going to do the same again. We're going to go all the way in, righty-tighty, and then we're going to back it off just a few turns, maybe a complete revolution. Now, this part of the process isn't essential, but I like to remove each cable end before installing the new cable and just give a few drops of 3-in-1 oil. This helps to waterproof the cable a little bit and certainly helps the lubrication to keep things running smoothly and slickly inside. And now it's just a case of installing the new cable. You might struggle to get it through at the right angle, but essentially there's a small hole at this end and a small hole on the other side. To make it easier, you can remove the outer cable just briefly, and then you can see daylight through one end. And it's a pretty simple process of just fitting through. And once it's come through, you can just make it far easier to fit through, and then you can push all the cable through. Sometimes the cable gets stuck at the exit point of the outer cable. If that's the case, just put it out, and that should be enough to free it and help it through. Most bikes have cable guides underneath the bottom bracket area. This is no exception, so we just slide this through the opening, and then we can continue to pull through from the other side. You can repeat the process with the lubricating here if you wish. Cable straight in, all the way through, and then out it comes at the derailleur. Now, this part is the most important. You've got a slight groove here cut into the clamp. That is to obviously hold the cable, and using your Allen key or your hex key, you just tighten the bolt over the cable until it's clamped shut. Now, you're going to do this with a fair degree of tension on the cable. If the cable's too slack, you'll know, because when you try and change into your first gear, which will be the second from smallest, it won't move. And I'll show you how to do that process now. You can already see there's a fair bit of movement here in the cable, but if we travel over to here, you'll see there's loads of slack. So that just isn't going to be enough to pull the gears up. So what we're going to do is, I like to undo this slightly so that the cable can move freely from side to side. There we go, so it's moving backwards and backwards. I like to push with my thumb, and to push the derailleur away, So almost like I'm trying to fit it onto the next smallest sprocket. So at the moment, this is a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. This is an 8-speed bike. I'm going to try and move this over into the 7th gear, so 1 down. At the same time, I'm going to pull on this cable. I need to release the tension a little bit. And there we go. You might have heard the clonk. That's pulled the cable. Using my index finger here, I'm going to hold that taut, and I'm going to tighten this bolt. Just going to add a bit more tension to make sure it's tight enough. Now, this is going to be the moment of truth. I'm going to pull the cable by adjusting the lever to go from gear 8 to 7, and we'll see what happens. Now, without testing it yet, I think this is bang on. But you can see what happens when we adjust this derailleur barrel screw. You can see this system going out of a line this way towards the outside of the bike, and then when we turn the barrel adjuster anti-clockwise, we're adding tension to the cable, meaning it's moving towards the inside of the bike. There we go. So we're going to dial it in, and we're going to get the derailleur here completely in line with this sprocket. That looks to be about it, but let's have a quick test. Okay, moment of truth. Into 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, and my favourite granny gear, and then down we go. Wonderful. There we go, all done. Now, if it was struggling to move down to the gears, taking its time, being hesitant at all, then you need to tighten this inwards, so righty-tighty, which means you're reducing the tension, allowing the spring of the derailleur to act better. Similarly, if you are wanting to go into the larger sprockets, then you're going to need to turn this anti-clockwise to add more tension and to help this over. But as a general principle, these are all in line with each other. Honestly, if there was a problem with this setup right now, looking at it, the problem's going to be with the outer cables and something being gummed up inside, or indeed a problem with the derailleur the spring, because sometimes when the derailleur gets old, this spring tension goes. Looking at this, perfectly in line. I didn't really need to test it. It should have been just perfect, which it is. Okay, now it's time to clear up. Using your wire cutters, you're going to clip the end of the cable. With your cable, you should have been given an end cap as well. And I like to use just some wire cutters just to nip up the end. And the final job is to install the dust cap. Now this can be a bit of a fiddly job. If you're lucky, you'll be able to get it in with your fingers and thumb. Otherwise, you might have to prop it onto the end of your screwdriver first and install it. There we are. It doesn't go in tightly. It literally just clicks into place. Job done. And that's how you change a standard rear gear cable. The principle is exactly the same at the front. Have a look at my other videos though, if you want me to walk you through the process. Thank you so much for watching. Please like, please subscribe to my channel. And also if you want to, sign up to notifications so you can be told when the next video has been released. Thank you very much for watching. Take it easy, and I'll see you next time.